a boxing betting expert.
I know, David.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He really gets into the nitty-gritty of this whole thing.
Terry, thanks so much for joining me. Your podcast for me is the destination podcast. So I go there before the big fights and after the big fights. The only criticism I had of your podcast is you don't do enough of them. The other thing that we have a shared background that you might not remember is that you once trained me at the Fitzroy Lodge, and I'm sure it was not as memorable as it was for you compared to me. But I remember at the time, given your level, you made me feel incredibly motivated to keep coming and keep honing those skills. So, I'm excited.
I was hurt you stopped.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It didn't come across like that.
Yeah. We've been wondering. There's missing posters in the lodge now.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, maybe the comeback. There's still time.
Yeah. No. Look, it's a massive culture change, right? Because like 15, 20 years ago, that would never have happened because the lodge was a far more intimidating place back then. And so, you couldn't just walk in off the street and have a few training sessions. Like it was earned, and it was pretty gnarly. Excuse me, getting yourself established. But I think what's happened over time, and we're in a different world now, aren't we? So that access has opened up. So now when people do want to go, I wonder what it would be like to get involved in boxing. You now have that platform and that opportunity. And, one of my beliefs is once you come through the door, as long as your attitude's straight, we just want to make sure you have a great experience so that you're one step further in your boxing journey than you were before you walked through the door.
Oh, yeah. No, it was brilliant. And I remember Mark Reigate was a big deal there. And as soon as you walk in, and some of my mates would say, oh, is it just boxercise? And I was like, no, it's not boxercise. We're getting in the ring. We're doing a lot, it was incredibly intense for our level. Everyone absolutely loved it. I don't think many of the people in my class went on to be any sort of professional or anything, but yeah, it was brilliant. And also it had that thing of you walked in that gym, you walked in the Fitzroy Lodge, you're instantly overwhelmed by the smell of training. It was it's not some like modern virgin active air conditioned place.
And the thing is, you've got that walk from the front door till you even get to speak to anyone. There's this walk of, oh my God, what do you do?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Everyone had it. I don't care what level you are, that first walk through the lodge, where you're walking, and you can see everybody's watching you. Like, who's that? Yeah. Oh my God.
And also, nowhere do I remember it's more important to bring your own gloves. If you have to get a set from that wall on the left-hand side, you're going to smell that for about 3 weeks afterwards.
Yeah, but you're going to have a lot of experience on your hands. I tell you that for sure.
That's true.
So just for context, right? Back in the day, they used to have these Lonsdale mitts, right? They were like razor thin. The thumb had worn out, so your thumb just stuck out, and that's what they gave you if you didn't have gloves. Like, we used to have them all lined up, and they were they're worse than MMA gloves, and you're basically hitting the bag with those. I always remember those, and that's like, right, I see why they have these. So it forces you to get your own gloves.
Yeah, right. Brilliant. All right, okay. So, and also, I want to talk to you about some of the stuff you do hands-on, your own boxing sort of side of things, and also your podcast, because I know that's, like I said, it's a destination one for me, and I know it's like you're getting huge numbers at the moment as well. So, but what is your first boxing memory? If you go back to like being a child, what got you into the sport?
So, like my background, like my dad's a footballer, and that's my dad's primary sport. So our house was a football house. I grew up in Zimbabwe, so it was definitely a football house. The other thing that made it interesting was you didn't really get a lot of live sport. So the main live sport you would get would be things like the FA Cup, the World Cup, the Olympics, some of the rugby games. And so boxing was something we'd always get on delay. So if a fight happened on a Saturday, we'd probably get it on the Wednesday.
Oh,
but
right.
I always remember Hagler Hearns. Okay. Not Hagler Hearns, sorry. Hagler Leonard. I always get those two mixed up. It was probably, Hagler Leonard when I was a really small kid, and my dad was making me watch that. And the thing about growing up in Zimbabwe is we're quite a fighting sort of culture. Like when you're kids, there's just a lot of scrapping. So that happened, and then everyone's outside boxing, like, really hitting each other. No nosebleeds and stuff, people crying. And so that's always my first memory, was watching that fight and everyone else had watched it, and then realizing day after everyone's just trying to be either Sugar Ray Leonard or Marvin Hagler. You're like, oh wow, okay. So I'd probably been doing stuff like that. So just sort of, you can call it sparring, but you're really just fighting with your mates, right? And we do that growing up. And it wasn't really till I came to England and I had better access to sport on TV that I kind of had my own mind when it came to boxing.
Right.
And so that would be just at the tail end of the Eubank Ben Collins era.
Yeah.
When I really started to watch and go, okay, this is cool. And then that pulled me into, right, let me like see what the sport's actually like. And I would have been, what year would I have been in? 11, end of year 11.
Okay.
That sort of time. And going into, there was a local club called Tame Boxing Club when I was younger. Really, really good standard for out of the way club that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Really, really good standard of kids in there, like quite traveler heavy as well. So you had to be about something to just be in that gym. And so I'd go, but I wasn't a very sporting guy, so I don't learn quickly. So I was basically getting my head punched in for a while until I've taken this approach to boxing from now on. I always set myself a goal every week. So one week it will be, don't get hit with this shot, or try and hit someone with that shot. And so week after week, I got better and better until they said, look, we're doing a gym show here. Do you want to get stuck in? Do you want to get involved? And I'm like, yeah. And they put me in with this other novice kid who was there, who was a little bit bigger than me, but it is what it is. And I did all right because I told you I'd grown up doing that sort of stuff. So actually the training's harder for me than jumping in the ring. And so I had a run there for about a year and a half. And then rugby took over and you're less committed. And then I didn't touch boxing again until I went up to Sheffield for university.
Okay.
And that's kind of around the kind of Nas versus Barrera time.
Yeah. Okay.
So Sheffield is bumping for boxing.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. It was the Muay Thai scene in Sheffield was red hot. The kickboxing scene in Sheffield was red hot. The boxing scene, obviously, with the Ingle Gym. But it wasn't even just the Ingle Gym. You got Glenn Rhodes down there. Clinton Woods was rising up the ranks. And you had another trainer in Sheffield called Howard Rainey, who was a legend. And was a pioneer in so many ways. And so I got the opportunity to go up to Winker Bank and the Ingle Gym and do some work with Unity ABC there while I was a student. But it's tough when you're a student, right? Because you discover partying, womanizing, and studying, and you're like, I don't know if I can add a fourth here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I was sporadic then.
So your father was a big football guy, but you ended up playing rugby. Did you ever sort of try the football?
Yeah. And I always remember, like, my dad was talking to his mates on the phone about me playing football, and he was just like, yeah, he's enthusiastic, but I don't really think it's his game.
Right.
I always remember that because it wasn't. Like, I'm a holding mid. That's my job. In football, I'm a holding mid. I tackle, I pass the ball to more skillful people, and I run again.
Okay. And what position would you play in the rugby field?
Flanker. So I kind of play the same position in all sports, really.
Right.
Kind of a traditional, annoying, nasty kind of player.
And how does that represent? What's your style in the ring?
I'm all in close. We're just going to do it on the inside.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't got the time to figure out distance and stuff.
So what do you have like an amateur record?
I did mainly gym shows, so I don't even think they count.
Yeah.
So there's probably about 14, 15 of those.
Oh, great. Yeah.
But they're against kids that won titles.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think they count officially. And then when I did go and try and take it seriously, I fell for an astigmatism in my right eye.
Oh, right.
And after that, they did everything to block me from trying because I was like, Joe Frazier did it. Why can't I?
Yeah, right. And so, what in those gym shows are they like 3 minute, 3-2s, or what's the format?
Yeah, 3-2s back then.
Yeah, and they score it. You get an outcome. Is a winner and
a
loser.
Yeah. So it's all like done. Like you jump in and it's pressure and it's pride and it's ego and like there are people there, like local people show up. But it's just not a whole load of officials coming in. That's the only difference.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so
which actually, interesting enough, that's how a lot of those guys from the Soviet bloc get those 401 records.
Right.
Because they basically, like, imagine you're at school, for example, right? And after school, PE teachers all come out, they're the judges, headmaster's the ref, everyone fights.
Yeah.
And then you can do that again on a Friday. And
Right.
that's how they rack up those ridiculous records.
Didn't know that. Interesting. Okay. And so yeah, the reason I remember when one of the first episodes of your pod I listened to was I'm going to say quite balanced in terms of the criticism that you were giving those people who thought AJ was the future of the sport and was a future Hall of Famer, greatest of all time. You know, this was a long time ago when he was coming through, beating these guys that he was 25-1 on to beat. A lot of people were saying he's going to be the next big thing, and where does he stand in the pantheon? And you were very realistic about his potential. So, but do you think that all this background you've got in actually boxing helps you identify where you see something that just doesn't sound right compared to the narrative? Do you think how much of it is because you've done it yourself?
Probably none, actually.
Oh, right.
It's more just being in gyms.
Yeah.
So the thing is, here's the thing. When you're an amateur, you're generally going to get put in with guys you can have a fight with. So there's a load of guys you'll never fight because you're better than them, and there are a load of guys you'll never fight because you'll never be as good as them, right? So you're always kind of in your own lane in amateur boxing. In the professionals, you can fight anyone if the money's right.
Yeah.
So you actually, like, you can compile a record of, I don't know, like 20-0 or whatever, but you may never get to fight the special kids because they're so far ahead of you.
Yeah.
But when you're in a gym, you get to spar everybody.
I see.
And so you get to spar the special kids. And you learn what makes somebody special.
Yeah.
And I always describe it, I think it's true in any sport. The really good boxers see a completely different ring. Yeah. That's how you feel, because you're in there and you're like, what the hell's going on here? I'll give you a prime example, right? I've got a friend, Javan Young, and this would have been between 2010 2011. He's getting ready for the Pan American Games. Well, he was actually a really good run. He went from doing the nationals into doing the Pan Ams and then in the World Championships, right? And I got to do rounds with him just when he was getting ready for the Pan Ams, and he's just super sharp and super dialed in. And it was being hit by an octopus. Like, you know you're getting hit, you have no idea where the shots are coming from.
Yeah.
And remember, you're friends at this point. You're like, okay, right. And then at that point, you're like, he's at a different level to what I am, and I can feel that right now because this isn't comfortable.
Yeah,
you see,
that's great,
and it's humbling, right? And so to bring it back to AJ, I've seen big lumps that can punch just come through. What happens eventually is there's a guy who doesn't move, and then at that point you need something about you. And Andrew Ruiz was that guy for AJ. He was a guy that didn't move.
Yeah.
But Andy Ruiz had been boxing since he was a kid. So he saw a different ring to AJ.
Yeah, right.
AJ saw, I hit you, you go down. I don't have to really think about too much apart from getting to you and hitting you. Andy Ruiz was thinking, where can I distract him so he brings his hands down and I can come over the top? He's doing, it's just, there's levels to it. Do you see what I mean? And Joshua never had that. Joshua, I'll say seconds on this. Joshua had the most privileged run to the Olympic gold I've seen in Britain. Like, if he had been born probably 9-10 years before, he'd had to go through guys like Ian Lewison, and that would never have happened. Okay. If he'd come through a few years after, he'd had to come through guys like Daniel Dubois, and that would never have happened. He just came at that point when we didn't really have anybody.
Yeah. That's a very interesting. I've never heard that phrase, that they see the ring differently, and I think that sums it up so articulately. And also, like you've just said, that the phrase levels, that in no other sport. Okay, there are other sports, they're all levels, but in boxing, just the level. Even you stepping up to that level and feeling inadequate compared, there are just so many levels that it's. I'm glad I've sparred one round with twice actually. One guy, he was about 50 when I was about 35. And that felt like a big age difference. And he challenged me. He said, "Look, hit me as hard as you want, whenever you want." And I said, "I don't want to because you're 50 and I'm 35." He goes, "Trust me, don't worry about it." And he convinced me to try, and I couldn't. I couldn't touch him. And then he said, "Right, I'm going to touch you in the next round. Just, do what you can." And at will, he could do what he wants. So, and I thought he was sort of like an older guy, but just that tiny bit of experience of me having just it. I have so much respect as you go up those levels, and it's interesting to hear you talk about you having the same experience at that next level as well.
Everyone does.
And then when you get to the very top, it's just you have these crossover fights, Mayweather v McGregor, and people don't understand the difference. Even McGregor at an elite level in his sport, it's just the level of what he does differently in the boxing ring. Like you say, they see that ring differently. It's not the same thing.
Oh God, no. That expression levels is powerful because that's kind of what it is, and you can't explain what it is because it's not just reps. Because if it was reps, we could all get there.
Yeah.
It's this weird thing of reps, actual intelligence, which people don't consider boxers to be intelligent, but there's some really incredible geometry happening in real time, and I think there's also this connection where there are some people where what they do and who they are just dovetail perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're the special ones where they found the one thing they can be elite at and they know how to be elite at it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And we've just seen Beterbiev and Bivol, and those are two guys who fit that mold perfectly. And you do see these guys. You see someone like AJ, and you're like, yeah, I get it why you're winning, but I don't think. I think you've even said yourself he could be an amazing rugby player, or a sprinter perhaps. There's plenty of other sports he could have done. He just happened to choose boxing, and that doesn't mean that it chose him. I don't think.
Yeah, he's the sort of person that every sports talent identification program would have on their database.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? There's a handful of people like that, right? I trained a guy called Jonathan Palata, and he's like that. He's 6'4", he's about 105, 106 kilos.
Yeah.
Could still hit sub 12 in the 100.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they're just people who are just perfect raw materials for any sport.
Yeah. And the opposite of that, in the 80s and 90s, there was the odd bit of footage of Mike Tyson either trying to hit a tennis ball with a tennis racket or shooting hoops, and he looked completely uncoordinated. You take him out of what he's excelling at, he can't do it. I was like, wow, he literally can't play basketball or hit a tennis ball, but put him in the ring. And I'm sure AJ could do, would be a multi-discipline sportsman if he tried something else.
Oh yeah. He I think he was. So I think he was like county rugby, county football, all of that.
Yeah. Okay, so who's been your favorite boxer to watch since you sort of started in those early 90s days watching Ben and Eubank and those guys?
Well, I probably missed the bulk of this guy's career, but it'll always be Roberto Duran for me.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's kind of my spirit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be at range jabbing and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'm going to be that sort of guy who just wants to have a rumble.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, happens. But I love Roberto Duran. Just sheer achievements, top end skills, capabilities. Duran, a man who went from 118 pounds to 168 in his career.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then I got guys like Floyd, Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, kind of in that same conversation as well.
Yeah. Very different styles, those guys.
Yeah, but very similar levels. Just like we said, just see the game differently.
Yeah, great.
And then who else is there? And then I always a special mention for someone like a Miguel Cotto, because I always look at Cotto and people go, he's not great. And I always say the thing about Cotto is you can train someone to box like Miguel Cotto. There's no freak factor to what he does. He's just fundamentally brilliant.
I feel his light went out pretty quickly. He was there, and then suddenly he sort of wasn't. He was talked about as one of the greats, and then suddenly. So I've done like 20 episodes of these conversations, and no one's mentioned his name. So you mentioning him, like, oh yeah, 15 years ago he was the man.
He just came into. It's like Formula One, right? Sometimes you come out the pit lane and it's just cars everywhere. You're like, And he came out when there's Manny, there's Floyd, Oscar was still around. I think if he had sort of found his own little niche, like if he was around now, for example, ah, we'd be throwing rose petals in front of him whenever he walked.
Okay, so those are some of your favourites. Like, who would you say is the best you've ever seen, even if you have to go back in the archives before you were watching it? Number one.
I'm always gonna say James Toney.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, you'd watch this guy and you're like, I don't think he's done any running at all, and he just had all of his angles figured out.
Yeah, yeah. That's a guy who was born to do it. Like you say, the crossover. But how did you describe it? Doing something you're born to do and wanting to do it. Yeah.
Who you are and what you do.
Who you are and what you do. James Toney, great shout. And again, a guy who went on a bit too long. Do you think there's anything in the idea that a legacy can be ruined if you carry on a bit too long?
No, I don't believe that. I think once you've given the fans what they wanted, you should then be free to do what you want. It's like Paul McCartney, right? I don't know what Paul McCartney's last album was, but Paul McCartney, no one ever says, yeah, I didn't listen to the Paul McCartney album. Yeah, maybe all that stuff with the Beatles wasn't that great. No, you go, right. That was a great guy. He had his time. And when he had his time, he was at the top of the tree.
Yeah.
Now, he's doing what makes him happy because he's made us happy already. And that's how I view boxing. So James Toney, I don't think you can tarnish the legacy he has because we still watch him.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, and so have you been to many fights live, like either like America or UK staging fights?
So I'm one of those guys. If I go on holiday, I'll take my gloves with me and I'll try and find a local show. So I'm I'm not really a nerd, but I'll go to a show. So let's say if I'm on holiday in America, and there's nothing going on in terms of big ticket boxing, you might end up in like New Jersey and there's like a completely off the radar show that no one knows about, or Connecticut, where there's this show that no one knows about, and you're watching really good guys that nobody knows about.
Brilliant. Wow.
Like I remember being in New York and like you'd go to Gleason's, for example, and there were guys there that you didn't even know existed.
Wow.
A good example is a guy called Chris Chapman. He boxed at light middleweight, and in America, he's anonymous. I think he's like an ex-Marine, or he's definitely ex-military. Took up boxing, loved it. Was trying to get fights in the UK, but it never quite worked out. But if he had been British, he would have been a British champion.
Wow.
But nobody knows he exists in America.
Amazing. And so, like, of all the shows you've seen, what would be the best one you've seen that viewers would know of?
It's going to be Chris Eubank Jr. versus George Groves. And the reason I say that is, as a result of the podcast, we were able to just organize a load of people to go up. So a load of people have just said, right, we're going to meet up in Manchester and go to this fight. And it pulled in people from all over the country. So we've had a whole day getting to know each other in person, a few drinks, great night. Go out to the arena, great fight. Like, that was a really, really dramatic fight, especially when George's shoulder popped out and you're like, is he going to survive? Yeah. The fights in the crowd, drama absolutely everywhere. But it was just such a great event. But in terms of like where you go, fights you've actually loved, I'm trying to think now. It's normally something small where I've watched someone like my mate Dominic Akinladi, watching him win his first title at York Hall, and it's just roaring. Yeah. And they're the ones I love. I love it when it's just roaring and you're like, I was not expecting this. Yeah. So I'm more of a small hall guy in terms of the shows I love and enjoy.
Yeah, so you've got that personal connection. It can't just going watching a marquee household name is not going to be able to compete when you've got that personal connection.
No, it's rough because you're miles away from the ring, so you don't really get the detail and the nuance, which I quite like. Yeah. Like when I watched Dan Aziz win the British title at Wembley, I could just watch it up close and go, right, he's doing everything that he's supposed to do. Yeah. But I'm not really a guy who wants to be up in the gods watching the boxing, because then I'm just kind of there for a jolly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so do you have a favorite weight division? And if so, why is it?
Wow. So I have a few. Welterweight for me, because there's small guys who are skillful. Yeah. Light heavyweight, biggish guys who are skillful, and then heavyweight, because we all have to love heavyweights, right?
Great. And okay, so this might be a good one for you, given your sort of hands-on experience. But if you could change one rule in the sport, what would that be? Is there anything that still frustrates you that the sport gets wrong?
Post weigh-in protocols.
Okay.
I would have mandatory post weigh-in protocols because
Yeah.
guys are killing themselves to make weight. And I think in that first hour afterwards, there should be some kind of liquid nourishment that the board have developed, right? That means that a guy can take 500 mil or a liter of this stuff, and it's going to replace all the key things they lose when making weight immediately, right? Which gives them like a whole day to start replenishing.
Yeah.
And then to follow on from that, what you can give your fighters during a fight to rehydrate.
Yeah. Wow. So beyond the water.
I think it's crazy we still tell them to have water, which is actually doing more harm than good.
Why is that?
So when you sweat, you're basically just sweating out and evaporating out your sodium, potassium, magnesium, zinc, all your kind of key micronutrients are just being sweated out, right? And what that does is it reduces the amount of cerebral spinal fluid you have, number one. It also reduces, I'd argue, just the kind of density of it. And that makes you more susceptible to, what they call brain shake when you get hit. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Whereas if you could replenish that, especially towards the end of the fight when you were less able to defend yourself, maybe that would give you a better chance of surviving. So if you're able to give someone an isotonic drink, for example, so the micronutrients in the drink would be in balance with what's in your body, or even if you made it sort of hypertonic, so there's more, just in case you can't absorb everything, then we'd solve that problem. But at least let's test it, because it can even be a standardized drink that the board issue, and you can't break the seal of it. The ref has to check that the seal's not broken on the bottles. We can do that, and I don't understand why we don't.
So my devil's advocate, I think that's a great idea, but playing devil's advocate, like one of the reasons, there are many reasons I'm against steroids in sport. One of the reasons I'm particularly against steroids in sport is that certain people adapt to steroid uses more than others will. You could fill someone full of steroids and you wouldn't see any change in them. You could fill someone else, and so is there a risk that one fighter might adapt to those, might benefit from those that sort of nutrients in those drinks better than another, and therefore get the beautiful thing about boxing is just having water. It's a level playing field. There's potential that someone physiologically could benefit from something that's perfectly legal,
but they've had a whole life of benefiting physiologically, right? Whether it's you're taller, you've got oddly long arms, you've got more fast twitch fibers. There are always going to be advantages and disadvantages in everyone's makeup. The key thing is, how do you navigate those successfully in the fight? So actually, I think this would be another element you'd have to overcome if that's the case. But I think if the broad science around concussions and CTE is around the brain shaking in the head and the lack of cerebral spinal fluid, if we can just solve that problem, if we can also solve the problem of the lack of micros in there as well and the impact that has on cognitive ability, I think that benefits everybody. But obviously, and that's why I say we have to test these things out just to make sure that we're on firm scientific grounding. The fact that we haven't come close to doing that is a concern.
It is, and even recently there was another tragedy just 2 weeks ago, I think. And I think the fact that we all sort of pay our respects, but nobody actually says, right, what can we do? What can we do different? No one's actually coming up with these ideas that you've got to actually implement something that could help in the future.
Yeah, and also boxing is this weird thing. Like, you wouldn't know you've got a bleed on the brain, right? Because you don't get a scan. Like, I don't know if I've got a bleed on the brain or not. And it could take one knock, and that's me. The sad thing in boxing is, like, you take that kind of risk profile and then put it in a really hazardous situation. So I think some of these are just are tragic events. Like, I don't know if it's inherently due to boxing, because a lot of people come out of boxing perfectly fine. Especially in the amateur side, most people come out of it fine, and obviously we feel bad for those who don't make it. But broadly speaking, it's a safe sport.
I do feel a little pinch of guilt when they on these big shows they often bring out a Hall of Famer that retired 5-10 years ago, and you just hear them. You're like, oh, you're just a bit different. I can see there's something. You know, some faculties have just there's a switch that's flicked there, and you just think it's just a reminder of what this sport is capable of.
Yeah, and some of them have got no money. That's even more heartbreaking. You
Yeah.
did all of that. You put your body and your health on the line for money you no longer have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why, you know, everyone's jumping at these Saudi opportunities to just go and get that cash, which is, you know, no one could ever criticize them for that. So, speaking, yeah, that's a segue onto the Saudi card. We just had the last crescendo literally 3 days ago. Did you have a standout fight on that card that you particularly enjoyed, or any decisions apart from the obvious draw decision? Did you anything there that you thought was an injustice?
An injustice. Obviously the Shiraz Adames result has people, you know, up in arms, which is understandable because when you can't really understand what the consensus view was from the judges, you're like, yeah, this is why we don't love the sport.
Yeah,
that's a challenge. I don't know if we can ever fix, but that is a challenge. I think that was probably the only surprise.
Yeah.
The Bacoli result, I absolutely expected, and it's like we talked about, right? Levels, and it's not necessarily inherent levels. It's the difference in level between someone like Martin Bacoli, who, if you put him in a ring today with most heavyweight, you could put him in a ring today in the condition he's in with Dave Allen, and he'd be fine.
Yeah.
But Joe Parker had a 12, 13, 14 week camp to hone himself to be in peak physical condition, and Bacoli hadn't. And you saw the difference that a training camp can make.
100%. I think the fact that Bacoli was it was great excitement, but the fact that people were genuinely picking him, you know, he had a puncher's chance at best. 315 pounds, jet lagged, arriving 10 hours before the fight. It's not Hollywood. You know, he is going in with an elite level pro who's been in the game for 20 years. Like you say, is at a 12-week camp. You know, Parker's he's no mug. I thought that was crazy. People were picking him.
From a betting perspective, what were the numbers on Bacoli to win?
About 6-4. So not even a huge price. So
wow.
Yeah. So the betting market and he was so they released the odds the day before the fight and everyone was backing him, so you could get a good price like 8-11 on Parker. So
that would have been good money. I wish that would have been that would have just been easy money. That's holiday money right there.
Keep an eye on our website and you'll see all the odds. So that was the draw. What about, how did you, I mean, Ortiz Madrimov is split everyone as well. What did you think of that one?
I thought Ortiz was a comfortable winner.
So did I.
And the reason I say that is, if you look at the first half of the fight, Madrimov looked like, sometimes someone looks like they're doing good stuff. So he'd be slipping and sliding, throw a couple of shots, slip, move. And people love all of that because it's a bit flashy. Virgil Ortiz was just all fundamentals.
Yeah.
Great combinations, great punch picking.
Center of the ring generalship, like controlling the pace.
And then you should always look at the reaction, right? So I'm always looking at, how does person A react when he gets hit by B, and how does B react when he gets hit by A? When Ortiz was hitting Madrimov was like, what the hell? You know, and I love seeing that. Look, I'm a big believer in combination punching. That's my, like, one of my coaching philosophies is we always punch in combinations because you can't defend everything. And Virgil Ortiz is really good at that. It looks a bit messy sometimes. It's not clean and precise, but it's so effective because he's got weight in his shots. And so you don't want to take that risk of being there with him because you don't know what he's going to hit you with. And, you know, he'll throw a lot of left hooks and then have you kind of wary of the left hook. And then he'll switch to the right hand, to his right hand. And then by the end of it, you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And Madrinov's got this the most insane fast twitch muscles I've ever seen in a boxing ring. It's a unique style he's got where he just looks like he's never in the same place. But for me, Ortiz looked like he's kind of a mix of Eric Morales and Antonio. I love watching Ortiz fight, and I thought I had him a clear winner in that fight, and a lot of people had Madrinov by the same margin, and I just saw a different fight.
I don't get that, but like I've learned, I think I think fans see a different game. I think like when you've just been watching people in a ring doing stuff for years and years, and you've seen thousands, if not tens of thousands of rounds in your life, you're now looking for the things that actually drive value in the ring.
Yeah.
Whereas I think as a fan, and I miss this, right? I'm watching with emotion. So I'm feeling the occasion and the moment and the ebbs and the flows. Whereas now me being a coach is just jaded. What I'm looking for is how's Ortiz trying to impose himself?
Yeah.
How's he trying to corral Madrimov towards the ropes or into the corner so he can let more shots go, knowing that he's not going to stop him, but he's going to wear him down now so that if Madrimov does decide to surge at the end, the tank's not there for him.
Yeah. And I think the fan element as well. They see who's marked up, and they think that's a factor of who's won or lost the fight. Like some people will mark up in you could. Josh Padley didn't have a single mark on him after going 9 rounds with Stevenson. He wasn't marked up at all. Doesn't mean he won a single second of that fight. He just there's a difference between how some people will mark up, and I think Ortiz was marking himself up with that guard. He was marking his face up because he was taking so many shots on the gloves.
Yeah, and it's I can't judge a fight by how someone looked at the end, because I had the whole fight to work out who won.
Yeah, and so that was billed. I also enjoyed you being slightly skeptical of it being the best card. I got so bored of people telling me it was the best card in history, and I was like, well, A, why does it matter, and B, is it really? But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a 9 out of 10 card. Like, what did you think of it overall?
I thought it was the kind of card that should be normal in boxing. It shouldn't cost you the best part of 25, 30 mil to put that card on.
Yeah.
Would be my view. Because think about this. It took 2 pullouts for that card to look shaky as hell.
Yeah.
And it was saved a bit by the light heavyweights. The light heavyweights basically carried that card.
Yeah.
I thought Smith versus Boatsi was a British boxing classic.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
2 guys who met at the right time.
Yeah.
And had complementary styles. And then
Yeah.
I thought Beterbiev and Bivol showed that at that elite level, you don't get to do flashy stuff. It's just bread and butter boxing done at a really high level.
Who did you have winning the main event?
I had Beterbiev winning.
Did you?
But I'm not mad with any result. Bivol, draw, whatever, because those guys are always going to be like that.
Yeah.
I thought there was a key difference this time. Normally, we're used to Bivol kind of with that real Soviet pendulum step, just being in and out. And he clearly realized that was doing him more harm than good because Beterbiev was reading it in the first fight. And so he said, let me just be there, but work with him. So when he jabs, I just let 4 shots go, knowing that he will never throw 4 shots at me.
Yeah.
And so it started to take a toll. Beterbiev had a surge, probably in that mid part of the fight. He had a really good surge.
Yeah.
And it looked like he was going to take control. And you're looking at him going, okay, it was like, if he could have been the Beterbiev of 5 years ago, he'd have put his foot on the accelerator and he would have ended that fight. But he's 40 now. So,
that's the thing. Like, no matter who you are, 40 is a factor. And And I've actually got no interest in seeing a trilogy fight, like the third fight. I think we've seen everything we need to see. But Beterbiev is only going to be older. I think, a great 24 rounds, but we can move on from those guys. What is there a fight that you're looking for? I mean, Saturday was brilliant. The last Crescendo, I loved it. It was exhausting to get started with. Boatsi and Callum Smith was like, wow, this is crazy. And it was still broad daylight outside. And we know we've got another 9 hours to come. And I'm scoring every fight because I want to have my opinions in case Twitter goes off. It was pretty exhausting. But you're right, though. Those are the sort of bills, like you say, if those 2 of those fights were gone, suddenly it's not that stellar card. And what are you looking forward to most 2025 after that?
I think we've kind of drained the family jewels have all kind of been sold now, haven't they? And so we're now into the gimmick fights, right? Canelo versus Terence Crawford. We're looking at you know, which heavyweight is going to fight Tyson Fury? Is he going to come back? We're into that kind of pantomime, you know,
Yeah.
let's do what gets traction amongst the public, which I don't necessarily support. I want to see Shakur Stevenson fight Keyshawn Davis now. I want to see that fight. I think that would be great for the sport. I'd like to see Tank jump in with someone like a Lomachenko. I mean, let Loma get his payday and sign off the sport the right way.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Teofimo Lopez jump in with Ryan Garcia or Devin Haney. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
After Madrimov versus Ortiz, I'd quite like to have seen Ortiz versus Crawford.
Mm.
I think that would be an interesting fight, actually.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, they're not all gimmicky fights there. So there's some decent matchups.
If they get made.
Yeah.
And so what's the appetite for guys to really make those fights this year?
Yeah.
Because I think it's what we want, really. Like Garcia Haney, they've already stoked that up into being a meaningful rivalry. Teo's always poking the bear. You know, like the incident with Keyshawn Davis, because those two have history, which is, we'll see how that story develops. So I think there are a load of interesting names and potential situations. I just wonder if they're going to get made.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't mind a little bit of a hiatus now because, we have been very spoiled. And I don't know. So, we've got Tank back this weekend, but I mean, I don't think anyone's particularly interested in that. I know.
But we are, though, because we need America to be healthy.
Yeah.
Look, the Saudis stuff is great for people's pension funds, right? It's not Vegas and it's not Madison Square Garden.
This is conspiracy theory nonsense, and I know other people have said the same. The atmosphere on Saturday night, at certain points, it sounded like it was a soundtrack. There was no movement on the pitches. Nobody was saying anything. If you looked at the people in the crowd, there was no noise, and yet I could hear hundreds of thousands of people cheering. Did you pick that up? I'm not the only person who said that. I was like, the pictures don't go with the audio. Something's disconnected here.
So they do that with the WWE, don't they? Where they've got, I think they've got like canned sounds. Like as you're watching the fight, you can press buttons and certain sounds will come through.
Right.
Maybe they did that because talking to people who were there, like there's no atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like, there just isn't. You're not. You haven't got boozed and coked up Brits.
Exactly.
Going mental in the stands.
Exactly. And then, okay, so what has been your best hot take since you've been following the sport for 20 years? The best hot take where you've seen a matchup, either it was a favourite that you knew was going to win or an upset that you saw where you've just thought, Terry knows boxing, nailed that.
I've had two. No. I've had three.
Okay.
So the first one was when Daniel Dubois fought AJ Carter.
Right.
And you got 10-3 on a first round stoppage.
Oh wow.
So everyone in boxing just piled in. Like everyone piled in. And when you like in group chats, it's like the bookies are gonna get killed for this one. This is so wrong. Because like when you know the two guys in the ring, you're like, this isn't going around. It can't go around.
Wow. Okay.
And so that's one of them. And that was just looking at a matchup on paper.
Yeah, okay.
The second one was when I told people back Bellew to stop Hay in the first fight.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I got asked, what's your betting take? And I said the Bellew stoppage is the best value.
Yeah, massive price.
Yeah.
So that
one.
Wow. That goes down as my coldest take. I thought in both fights I backed Hay pretty heavily to beat Bellew, and I couldn't have been more wrong. That's a brilliant hot take. Okay.
I saw him. I saw him on a daily basis. I saw David. I was like, no way.
Wow.
No way.
And the third one
was Lucas Brown versus Dillian White.
Yep.
And I told people, I actually said this on the New Age pod. I said, go and put your money on Lucas Brown to get stopped in the first half of the fight.
Yeah.
Because I'd got a phone call probably the last week of camp, where Lucas got wiped out by Derek in sparring.
Right.
And I got the call and I said, "Is the fight off?" They said, "No, the fight's going to carry on." And I was like, "Oh, that's a wrap." And I went straight to Bet365 and I said, "Right, 200 quid, Dillian White stoppage, done."
Yeah.
I just never doubt, and it's dangerous, right? It's dangerous to have people, especially after they get wiped out, to go in and then fight in 10-ounce gloves. I think is highly dangerous.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. And I'm very pleased to hear that these hot takes have been accompanied by decent sized bets as well. Now, what about
always gamble responsibly?
Of course. And what about what about when you got it wrong? When you've just got a cold take, like my hay over Bellew, when you've just seen something and felt, nah, I've got that wrong.
Well, I had to be a bit of a hay cheerleader for the first fight because obviously I was in camp, right? So publicly I had to be a cheerleader. And when he lost, I just remember my whole Twitter feed was, "You better record tomorrow. Do not go missing. You better record, you better record, you better record." I'll tell you when I was wrong. And I regret it because my instinct told me to go the other way. It was Joshua versus Ruiz.
Yeah.
I was wrong on that. But my instinct told me, I was like, hold on. Ruiz has been quite active.
Yeah.
I wonder what he would do with some activity because he was everything that was wrong for Joshua. He was quick. He had a decent chin back then.
Great left hook. The left hook, AJ's always struggled with a left hooker.
Yeah. And he just, the combinations and ring IQ. He struggles with ring IQ. So that would have been the one where I was like, I can't believe I got that wrong because it was so obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised you did because, like I said, you've always been very cautious about the AJ hype. So, and then since that sort of exposure, I know you were very strong on the Usyk AJ matchups as well.
Yeah, I didn't think Joshua had a chance.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought, and it wasn't even anything super technical. I just thought the pace that Usyk would set would break Joshua mentally.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, any other cold ones? It's always interesting to hear when people who know their stuff have got it wrong, apart from Andy Ruiz.
Do you know what I need? I need people who listen regularly to pull me up because they always remember the stuff I get wrong. Because normally, what did they say to me? You told us, you told us Jonathan Pilato would be a British champion inside of 10 fights. And I was like, I believed it at the time.
Right.
But I think life just kind of got in the way. I think if he had knuckled down, if he had dedicated himself to boxing, I think he would have done it. But, you know, we learn with the benefit of hindsight.
Of course. And who would you have down, like UK or global household name, most overrated boxer of like the last 25, 30 years?
Wow. I had loads. There are absolute loads of them. That'd be Joshua. I'll put Joshua in there. I'd put Conor Benn in there.
Wow, yeah.
And it's gonna be a lot of the more recent ones in the social media age. You get cooked up. Yeah. I'm not gonna put Campbell Hatton in there because I feel for him. I think he was put in a position he was never ready for.
Yeah.
So there's that. Overhyped. And it has to be people who have quite a hollow. Callum Smith, I think, was overhyped as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. If you look at his record, this is his best win. At the tail end of his career, this is his best win. You could probably put all the Smith brothers in there, to be honest. Yeah. So I think we create this culture of just hyping people to the moon and back. Right? But British boxing doesn't create the type of boxer who can have a sustainable career at the top. It's rare that we do it. The only person I've seen really figure that out to any kind of consistency was Brendan Ingle.
Okay. So I mean, who do you have? Okay, so yeah, those guys are overrated. Who do you have as the best British fighter of the last couple of generations?
I'm going to park Lennox because Lennox had his boxing education in Canada. And I think it enabled him to have access to things he wouldn't have had in this country.
Yeah.
In this country, it's Carl Froch.
Yeah.
I just look at his run and his record and go, you can't question that.
Yeah. Wow.
You just can't.
Yeah.
And also being part of what revived big time British boxing
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's 80,000. So it's very interesting. We've spoken for nearly an hour, and I did mention Mike Tyson's basketball skills and tennis skills, but we've not mentioned Mike Tyson. Where do you put him on the all-time list?
Nowhere. No, honestly, nowhere. Because for me, there are two criteria to be in that Hall of Fame. So number one is, who did you fight? Number two, what did you do against them? Do you see what I mean? And so I think Tyson's record in terms of names is good, but you lost twice to Vander Holyfield. A Holyfield who was eminently beatable, by the way.
Mm.
You lost to Lennox. Do you know what I mean? And really, that's your big time career. And I know people say he fought Larry Holmes and Michael Spinks. Yes, but they don't feel like what I'd call Hall of Fame worthy wins. He hasn't got those. If he had beaten Holyfield twice and beaten Lennox, he'd be in there.
Yeah.
And so you can't put him in the same company, just on record, not in terms of commercially, on record. You can't put him in the same category as guys like Lennox. Now you got to talk about Usyk, but if you talk historically, Ali, Foreman, etc., he's not at that level in terms of his record. But for reawakening the public's love for boxing in a post Ali world, then he's untouched. No one comes close to Mike Tyson.
Yeah. So and presumably you loved watching him in the 80s and 90s.
I love Mike Tyson. Like you say to me, favorite boxer.
Yeah.
Tyson's in that list. But you say greatest. Now I've got to take myself away and how I feel and look and go, who needs to sit at this table?
Spot on, Terry. That's the best like summary of Mike Tyson I think I've heard. And okay, so who is your number one heavyweight in the history?
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
We haven't had a heavyweight do what he did.
Yeah.
We just haven't had anyone come close to the speed, the accuracy, like I said earlier, the punch picking. Just he could take people apart. He could see the openings, and you're like, I'm not seeing that, and he would see it. Yeah. Well, okay. Who am I? Who am I to criticize greatness?
Yeah.
So I put him top of the list, and then it kind of it's all a bit of a debate, and I guess it depends on what era you came up in. So I always put Foreman second, because we haven't seen a guy be that destructive, and then he had that glorious second act as well, where he just became an old man who was there to be hit, but when he hit you, like I said, I always look at the reaction to the guy getting hit.
Yeah.
And people looked scared to get hit by George Foreman, and I don't blame them.
I'd love to see that second iteration of George Foreman around now in his early 40s. He'd be one thing I would suggest you don't do is watch the George Foreman movie that came out recently.
I tried to.
One of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
Not a boxing fan behind the camera there.
No. And I don't know how Big George allowed that to be signed off, but that was very, very bad stuff. So you've obviously met quite a few pros. Have you ever met your hero Duran? Or any sort of anecdotes about meeting, these Hall of Famers?
Yes. So I used to work just off the Edgware Road. And this was around the time when Gervonta Davis was fighting one of the Walsh brothers, Liam Walsh, I want to say. Yeah. And so Mayweather was in town. And if you remember, Frank Warren had all of his presses at the Landmark Hotel.
Okay.
So the Landmark Hotel is where we used to have most of our company meetings.
Oh, wow.
So knew the staff there really well. That's why I'd go for lunch with my mum sometimes, because she could get the train home. Been there on a few dates and stuff. I know the Landmark really well. I know the staff.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking past the Landmark, and the footman said to me, Floyd Mayweather's in there. And I'm like, I'm going in.
Wow.
So I go in, and I'm looking for him, right? And then just when I think I haven't found him, there's like a small ante room, and he's in there. And I'm dressed in my work stuff, right? And I'm like, right, this is my chance to really, really nail this. And I just go super confident. I'm like, Floyd, I've been looking for you everywhere, right? And he's got his bodyguards with him. And the bodyguard's like, who the hell is this guy? Floyd just goes, nah, chill. I'm like, how are you, man? How was the flight? Da, 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 da. And so me and Floyd, yeah, we do all the niceties. And then we start talking boxing. Like how's Tank looking? How you feel the fight's going to go? Da, 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 da. Then we start talking about his career, what he's doing. And I managed to squeeze about 3 minutes of conversation
Oh wow.
with Mayweather before the bodyguard's like, sorry, brother, man, we got to go. We got to go.
Oh
But
man.
I was surprised by how big his hands are.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Does he seem like how tall are you?
About 6'1".
Does he seem like a very small man?
He's a small guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a small guy.
Does he have that aura you talk about? These,
Yes.
you know,
100%.
right.
There are two guys I've met where I'm like, it's him and Eubank Senior.
Oh yeah.
I always remember we're getting a train from Brighton to London. I'd gone for a day trip with my girlfriend, and I'm on this train, and I'm sat opposite Senior and the woman he was with, right? And my girlfriend's looking at me like, that's your favorite British fighter. Like, why aren't you talking to him? I'm like, I'm fucking trying. I'm trying. And then then she starts talking to his girlfriend to break the ice. Then me and Chris start talking.
Oh
And we
wow.
actually start talking about shirts. Where'd you get your shirts done? He's like, Savile Row, Kempton
Yeah.
Kerwin. And he's telling me, and he's schooling me on the cut to go for. He's looking at me going, with your frame, this is a collar. I'm like, what?
Oh wow.
And so we had about 40 minutes of great conversation.
Oh man.
And then, interestingly enough, I met him at the Haringey Box Cup because his son Seb, rest in peace, was in the same bracket as one of the guys I was training. So we just sat next to each other watching, going, I'm like, I don't know if your kid's going to beat mine, Chris. I don't see it. I don't see it. And he's like, you know nothing about boxing if you think that.
Oh,
and we're just going back and forth.
Did he remember the train ride?
No, he didn't, but I didn't expect him to.
Yeah.
But he did remember the Haringey because when I have seen him since, he's always
Okay.
like, how's your young man getting on?
Oh, great. Massive fan of Chris Eubank Senior, so that's a great one. Right. Okay, so love those. That's the beauty of the sport and the connections you have, but what is the worst piece of sportsmanship you've seen in the sport?
So it'll always be the whole Panama Lewis thing, won't it? The taking the padding out the gloves.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I can't remember the young Irish kid. I can't remember his name. Well, American Irish. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But remember, he killed himself afterwards. Like never really got over that beating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Panama Lewis had a reputation for stuff like that. Because remember, with Aaron Pryor, it was like, "Give me the other bottle." You're like, "What do you mean other bottle? Like, what have you got in there? Ephedrine or something?"
And Panama Lewis was involved. I reckon 10, 15. There was a big fight. I can't remember who he was involved with, but he came back in the headlines for being involved with one of the marquee heavyweights, and so that's how I learned about that the old glove replacement thing.
Yeah, he's you know what? And the thing about boxing is we let people like that back in.
Yeah.
And we need to have firmer controls on that. But for me, that's it. Because generally, I'll be honest with you, boxing is this weird thing, and you don't see it until like, if you ever want to see what boxing is really about, go to Marbella or Ibiza in about July, end of June, July. Because almost everyone in boxing just descends on Marbella or Ibiza, right? And you'll be out, and someone will just tap your shoulder. It's like, mate, you know, you're from the lodge. I'm like, yeah. So yeah. I'll box one of your guys. And then everyone's just there. Like, there's a guy from Rotunda. There's a guy from Everton Red Triangle. There's a guy from Moss Side here. There's a guy from Rumbles over there. And everyone just links up. Yeah. And there's this love of just being, I mean, just having a shared sport. And I love that. And so generally, we always try and do what's fair.
Yeah.
And the wrong ones get exposed. Like, I'll give you an example of like sort of some of the shady stuff that can happen. When you're matchmaking, the hardest thing to do is the debut, right? The first fight for a kid is the hardest one because there are kids who do their debut after 10 years in the gym, and there are kids who do their debut after 10 weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's really, really hard to match. Yeah. And what you're relying on is the other club to say, look, how long has your kid been boxing? I go, okay, 10 weeks. He goes, look, it's probably not a good fight to make because my guy's been boxing for 10 years. And I'm like, okay, let's not do that. That's good matchmaking. That's good respect in boxing.
Yeah.
Bad respect in boxing is allowing that to happen. Yeah. And then your kid with 10 weeks gets absolutely splattered. And you're like, why would you do that?
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Or sometimes a coach will come to you and say, look, we've got a kid. He needs to get a win. Like, he's lost his last 10. He's okay, but he's not that good. Box puncher with his head. Have you got anyone that can give him an interesting competitive fight over 3 rounds without stopping him, basically? And then you look and you go, yeah, we've got someone here who can do that.
Yeah.
And, and then that way they get the experience of being in with someone of their level, and they get to know what it's like to have the ebb and the flow of like a competitive fight. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never thought about that either, but that's, I can imagine, like you say, the 10-week experience versus the 10, what is the science behind that matchmaking? Like, so what do you think is the secret to it?
So how matchmaking works, right? There's like a central database, right? And so I look for, we'll just talk seniors for now. Juniors is different because you all got to be the same year at school and stuff. So there are natural guardrails there, which is good. But seniors, so let's say you wanted to have your debut. I'll go find people in your weight class for a start. Then I'll go find people that have had no bouts, right? And then from those 0 bouters, I have to find the most suitable candidate.
Yeah.
Now, if I do my due diligence, I'm going to call every club and go, what's your guy like? Yeah. And they're going to give me a profile. And I'll be like, it's a bit too strong for my guy. Yeah. Some clubs will lie. And they may hide the fact that their guys had 15 kickboxing bouts in Poland, or he boxed in the Italian championships. Do you see what I mean? It's harder with the internet now, but people used to do that.
Yeah, right.
And so that's when it's risky. But once you've seen someone box, it's fine. You either want to make the fight or you don't.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. All right. Brilliant, Terry. Like, you said a couple of things, like several things that in this conversation that I've never heard anyone say before. So it's fascinating insights. So on the without the having those sort of expertise, just a bit of fun for these last ones. Do you have a favorite quote in boxing from any of the big fighters?
It will always be Chris Eubanks. Can we have some parliamentary procedure, please?
I don't remember that one.
So I think, I can't remember if it was for the first or the second Ben fight. I think it was probably for the first one because he looked like he was looking away from him. And Nigel was talking. I think Chris was trying to talk, and Nigel was trying to interrupt. Like, here we go, Chris. Here we go. And Chris is like, look, can I have some parliamentary procedure, please?
That's superb. I didn't know that one.
Yeah, and all designed to get under Nigel's skin, which is brilliant.
Fantastic.
But that's my conspiracy theory in boxing. I believe those guys have been mates from day one. I do. I think those guys have been mates from day one, and this is just a huge act. Them not liking each other is just a huge act. Because I'm like, how they can't hate each other like this? And do you know when you watch them, you're like, nah, this has to be something they've just agreed to always do.
That's so funny. But you're not going to tell me that Conor Benn and Eubank Jr. are mates now. That's legit.
No, it's not. That's not.
They're kidding us as well.
They're 2 kids from privilege. Like, they know what they need to do.
Who do you see winning? Who've you got favourite in that?
Okay, so I think Chris will win. But if I want to put 100 quid on someone, I want to put 100 quid on Conor.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
I think the values in Conor, the probabilities with Chris.
Yeah, nice.
God, I sound like a betting guy now. Ooh.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm like, I'm writing that up straight after we get off this. Okay, so what about apart from your own podcast? What is your destination podcast in the sport, and also like your favorite boxing book or movie?
It's going to be this one now, and then we'll add Porky's Corner to the list. So,
okay,
yeah, it's different to what I do. Porky's definitely on the. If boxing was politics, I'm a bit of a centrist, right? I'm a centrist, maybe a right-leaning moderate. Porky's right. He's all the way over there, and he's happy to be there, and he does really, really good content.
I don't know that. Okay, yeah,
Porky does really, really good content.
Is that UK or US?
UK.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to get used to the format and get used to it being a bit like punk rock, a bit guerrilla,
Okay.
but yeah, consistently good content from a guy who really understands the game.
And just like, so what strikes me about your pod is you do it all yourself. You never brought a sidekick on. You got your notes and you just sit there for an hour and you just go through everything you want to talk about. Does Porky have a guy on, or is he on his own?
Like he'll pull me on, for example.
Okay.
He'll ring me. Yeah, so he has guests on, and that works for him because everyone's got a different personality. So they bring different things out of him. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So like with me, like him and I are really close friends.
Okay.
So I know how to needle him when I need to. So when I know he's a bit flat during a recording, I can needle him and go, all right, here, get him fired up now because people want to hear him.
Yeah.
And I think when you've got those sorts of characters, you get the right chemistry.
Yeah, great. I'll definitely check that out. And okay. What and movies and books?
The Tao of Muhammad Ali. That David Rennick.
Okay.
That's I still love that book. So that's definitely up there.
Not read that one. Okay.
Look, when it comes to boxing films, I love Raging Bull. Like the cinema fan in me loves Raging Bull, but I love other like sort of B movies. Like, do you remember The Warrior?
No.
With Brian, is it Brian Dennehy?
Okay.
Yeah, and like young kid in Boston has to fight to make money for some gangster.
Okay.
And yeah, that's a good one. Weirdly enough, I quite like the Creed.
Yeah.
The Creed reboot. I've really enjoyed those as well.
Yeah. They don't stack up to the original Rockies though.
They, in some ways, no. But we're older. What I love about these is how they connect with the boxers we know. Like it's native to how we understand boxing. Right?
Yeah.
So Max Kellerman's there, Andre Ward's in there, Terence Crawford's in there. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So I love that bit of it, which is what they started with Rocky Balboa, right? When they brought Antonio Tarver in, and then you had the full HBO experience. Yeah. So that maybe that's why I feel a bit closer to sort of the latter films in the franchise because of that.
It's quite a fun gimmick that you're like, who's gonna like in one of the I think in one of the Creed movies, they have Mike Tyson ringside, and they mention Mike Tyson ringside, but like he's never featured in the entire Rocky universe. So you're like, what?
No, he has. In Rocky Balboa, you get Mason the Line Dixon shouting out the ring at Mike, and Mike's like, "You're not a real champion. You never fought anybody, you know."
But that's what I mean. He's only introduced at that point. Nowhere in the last 10 years, no one's ever thought, where's Mike Tyson in this whole sort of universe?
Yeah, it doesn't get mentioned in terms of who's your favorite boxer or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, brilliant. So, what is the best, this could be a Mike Tyson one, the best ring entrance you've ever seen? And if you can't answer that, what is the best goosebump moment where you're about to watch the fight? It's final referee instructions and the heart's pounding and the goosebumps, apart from one of your own fighters, like something you've watched on TV.
Mayweather Pacquiao for the goosebumps moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like that's what we'd all been waiting for.
Yeah.
Ring entrance. I've got to put Kell Brook. Like,
oh wow,
I think Kell Brook's got the greatest ring entrance ever.
Was that all of the lights?
Yeah. How he chose it, why he chose it, I have no idea. But if you remember the fight he had with Golovkin.
Yeah.
Think back to how you felt when those strings started playing.
Yeah.
And then Kel just pops up and he looks really, really small. Like it was the wrong camera angle, but he looks really tiny against the background.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, that guy's gonna fight Golovkin.
Yeah.
And he just comes out and like you know what he's about to go through, and you've got Rihanna with this really uplifting song. I'm like, wow.
No, that's a good one. That's a great one. Okay, what would be your? I get you're a movie fan. You're probably a music fan as well. So, what would be your entrance music? You must have thought of that, Gym Guy.
It changes. It changes. Like I go through phases where there's a phase where it would have been Adam F. Circles.
Oh, okay, don't know that.
Yeah, so Adam F. Circles, one of my favorite songs. But if I were to do it, what would I do? Where I'm at right now, because I base it on what I'm listening to when I train.
Yeah.
it might be like Nipsey Hussle. So what it feels like is a great
Okay.
song, which I think was completed posthumously as well, which gives
Oh,
it
right.
an emotional
Okay.
tinge. But yeah, what it feels like from Jesus and the Messiah soundtrack. It's a great song.
Nice, brilliant. All right, Terry, that has been a really, really entertaining hour. And where should people find you? Either your Twitter, what socials you're on, and also we'll put it in the description. But to make sure people can find your pod.
Oh my God. So Instagram, Twitter at Highfield Boxing.
Yep.
Facebook is just Highfield Boxing.
Okay.
Which is doing stupid numbers in the last 6 months. Like, wow.
Right.
I think they're the main platforms. If you've got business inquiries or you want to make money, LinkedIn, Terry Chapendama. Don't say anything you want on your boss to read. That's all I'll say on that one.
And Terry, with your pod, what is your policy with when you record? How is it whenever you feel like it, or do you do it? Is there a structure to when you put some content out?
No, and that's by design.
Yeah.
So I don't want to feel the need to always talk, because there are times when boxing just isn't giving me anything.
Yeah.
But then there may be times where we get hit with 3 big things in a week, and I'm like, I've got to speak on all 3 of these.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Will you be doing a post last crescendo debrief?
Oh, the notes are here, so now I'm like, am I in the headspace to do it? This is why I don't have a co-host, because I'd rather just sort of do it now. Like and it'd be very hard to call someone last minute and go, look, you ready to record?
Yeah.
I'm not Kanye West, luckily.
Yeah.
But
Brilliant.
yeah. So that's what I do. Yeah. But look, we've done probably 350 of these so far.
So when did you start? What year was it?
I started doing the New Age pod in 2016.
2016. And the Highfield Boxing?
2019.
Yeah, I reckon I'm an early adopter. I reckon I've been with you the whole trip, I think. I remember like the first episode I heard you, because you do a lot of the psychology of the sport as well, and obviously the sport inside out. That comes across so clearly. But I remember just thinking you saying stuff, and I was like, "Oh my God, I completely agree with this man."
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
a hard learner. So I was a really hard learner. So I boiled the ocean in order to learn how to be competent at boxing. So there isn't a mistake I haven't made.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Brilliant. All right, Terry. Well, look, I got to say thanks a lot for your time. That was really, really good fun for me, and I'm glad. It's taken a little while to get you on, but I'm glad I persevered to find you. And thanks a lot for your time.
I'm glad we made this happen.
All right, Terry. See you soon. Thanks, man.